So hello again everyone, and welcome to the next in our series of lockdown webcasts that we're bringing to you from Travel Weekly to keep you all connected during this COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by three leading retailers with me today, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how we are going to emerge from the lockdown, as they're all running big businesses and will all, I'm sure, be thinking about this and have things in the planning. So joining me today, I've got Caroline Donaldson, who is the Director of Product and Commercial at Barrhead Travel. I've got Natalie Turner, who is the Head of Retail at Midcounties, and then Simon Morgan, who is the owner of Tailor Made Travel. So welcome everyone, thank you for joining me.
Hi. Thank you.
So I'm actually going to start with you, Simon, because I think we wrote about your plans some time ago. You've been sort of quite, I guess, early in this, but you talked about putting screens in your shops. I don't know if you've moved those plans further forward yet, but tell us where you are with your thinking of how you might get your 20 shops back up and running.
Before we even shut the shops down, Luce, I was thinking about reopening them. So we put health and safety protocols into play where we bought masks, we bought gels, we bought antibacterial sprays and wipes, and wrote a policy around no touching each other, etc., etc. This has now been blown up into a bigger document with more and more procedures. We've put screens into half a dozen of the shops already, and I think that our opening we need to be a little bit careful with. I'm not just going to blast 20 stores open. Whilst there's a furlough scheme in place, we should take advantage of that. So we'll go on a softly approach. So 4 to 6 stores initially on the first openings. We've got slightly differing rules in South Wales in that we're locked in for another 3 weeks end of. So we're not playing by quite the same rules as the English rules, and I think.
So have you got? Sorry, Simon. Have you got a date at which you think you could open the first 4, as you say?
On the day that Boris sort of relaxed figures, we were given another 3 weeks. But right, the Welsh Assembly does say that they're the first to bring into law distancing and procedures for employers. So I think that we possibly could legally open our stores now. It's measuring up demand versus the risks for the staff. We're not politicians, we're not medical experts, but we look at the death toll in Wales and it's fairly flat line. It's not dropping. So I've got 100 families that rely on me for their safety. So I'm going to leave us closed for another probably 3 more weeks, working on telephones only, and then we'll slowly but surely 4, 6, 8, 10 bring the stores back online in line with demand as well. So.
Okay, lots of points you've raised there, which we'll come back to lots of those, but let's bring the others in. Let's go to you, Natalie, because obviously within your group you've got supermarkets and pharmacies, and I know that you've obviously had to bring quite a lot of measures, sort of health and safety measures, and also different protocols in for those businesses, which presumably you can now, I guess, look to see if they might be relevant in travel agencies.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's been a huge advantage for some counties because all the learnings that have been applied from the other trading groups, particularly in food and healthcare, we can have been able to learn from a PPE perspective and a colleague perspective, and also our customers of what they expect as well. So we're well prepared and have a lot of insight, whether that be from customers, our travel customers we've recently done a survey for, so have their feedback on their expectations from a safety perspective, but equally their preferences to how they want to transact with us if we do start to operate again in the branches. So it's been huge from a training perspective. We've got a lot of materials that we've already got in place to sort of share with our colleagues, as well as the PPE. So similar to Simon, in the fact that, the screens, etc., they've been rolled out in other divisions, so the learnings can be applied from that. But we'll still look at piloting in travel branches to start with, just to make sure that, you know, there aren't any other learnings just from a travel perspective that we need to consider and apply that hasn't already been thought about.
Yeah, and out of interest then, this interesting, you've done a survey in terms of, you know, customers, what they feel they would need, I guess, to feel safe. What have the results of that been?
The results really, the top choice, you know, the top sorts of indicators have been the 2 metre distancing. So we're looking at, as we've got in our other trading groups, you know, how we position. Obviously, it will be, you know, to start with, we won't be allowing any customers into the branches, but when we are planning to do so, we'll have it clearly tight where customers' chairs will be seated. And customers want the 2 metre distancing. We'll only have very minimum staffing levels that will operate in the branches, and we've got the backup of the virtual call centre already in place. But customers also obviously are expecting screens because they can see those in other retailers that are currently open. So I think that's a given expectation. And the hand sanitizer accessibility, both from a customer perspective as well as obviously we would naturally have that for colleagues. So that's mainly what the feedback has been from our customers from a PPE perspective and a safety for themselves. And
as you say, they're used to it in supermarkets now, and so it's an expectation, and it wouldn't be something that would put them off.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
What about you, Caroline? And I guess as well, same with Simon, he's got different rules in Wales. You've got different rules in Scotland, and of course, hard for you because you've got shops in Scotland, in England, and in Northern Ireland. So how are you looking at those different guidance that you're getting in different areas?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we've got shops everywhere, and like Simon, there's different guidelines per government, so that's a challenge for us, you know, that we may find ourselves having a set of rules for our Scottish shops and colleagues and different rules for Northern Ireland and England. So it's something that we're working through, and as and when we get clear guidelines, we can start formulating how we adapt to those. But yeah, that is something that we have had to consider as well as everything else.
And so, and time frame for you then, Caroline, if Simon's looking at sort of 3 weeks, what about, you know, what are you thinking of in terms of when you might be able to get at least some shops open?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, our shops are all shapes and sizes. Some of our city centre stores are thousands of square foot. So I guess it's following guidelines as to what shops we can open and when. Like Wales, we are 3 weeks just now, but you know, irrespective of when the government guidelines say we can return, we absolutely only will do that if it's safe to do so for our colleagues and also our customers.
Okay, and then in terms of sort of what you're looking at, is it similar, you know, the screens and the 2 metre distance, you know, will you put stickers on the floor? What, I mean, how will you actually work it? What, you know, the physical things, the sort of practical health and safety things you might put in? The
list of questions is so extensive. We're working through just now all possibilities and how they can be implemented, but things like how do we keep our employees safe? How can we keep our customers safe? How do we get to and from work? Do we need to look at different shift patterns? Where's everyone going to sit? Taping, and also the PPE equipment. Where do we source it from? How do we get that? What does that look like? Have we got enough sanitation? So it's just endless questions that we're just looking at all different possibilities just now.
Yeah, and all of that is going to cost money, of course. I mean, coming back to your point, Simon, you were saying obviously you don't want to do everything in one go, not least because the furlough scheme is still operating. And of course, the minute you open a shop, you then, I guess, got to start paying your rates. You know, end of any rates holiday, you've got costs, haven't you, instantly. So, and I'm sure everybody is struggling and suffering because of the situation we've been in with limited income. So, how do you balance that, the sort of economics of it? I mean, we've talked about the health and safety, but how do you balance the economics of reopening?
It's a really fine line, and the only way that we can balance the economics is to closely monitor booking traffic, client patterns and demand. And it's all eyes on the media in this case. The bars and restaurants of Benidorm are now open. We're not allowed to go there, but they're open and serving drinks and what have we. All the restaurants and hotels in Dubai are open and ready to serve us. So we need the media to be reporting this, and we need to be reporting it ourselves in order to drive demand. We've done some trial stuff over social media, and actually there's been backlash about us promoting that places are open amongst the community, telling us that we shouldn't be promoting travel whilst people are in lockdown, the pro-lockdown brigade, if you like. So we have to be respectful of that and wait for that attitude to change. So I think a few more weeks.
And is that just a few people, or is it actually quite a strong voice that those people who are perhaps a bit averse at the moment?
In village social media sites, and I'm sure across the country you have a local town sites or forum that's specific to towns. They can be almost vigilante in some respects, and they'll single people out if they're out during lockdown and what have we.
Yeah.
So they're very pro. I'm staying in, and I'm the only person who's been at home for the last 6 weeks without going out once, etc., etc. So we don't want those in our Facebook feeds.
And how did Matt Hancock's statement about? Well, I've already seen you roll your eyes, but I was going to say how his statement that it was unlikely anyone would go on a summer holiday, and then Grant Shapps saying, well, it's a risk to book a holiday. I mean, it's not been a great week, has it, really, for travel and
it's
travel
really
agents?
not. I really wish that the politicians would think before they make statements like that. Obviously, we're not going to have the mass business that we would usually have in July and August if he's talking about hundreds of charter flights popping off to the Balearics. But there will definitely be flights. There will definitely be accommodation open and ready to service, and we will have a market. And those of us that are ready to sell to that market and pitch to the clients that want to travel will make revenue this summer.
Okay, all right. Natalie, let's come back to you. I mean, you've surveyed your customers, which is really interesting. What's the feeling amongst your staff? Have you surveyed them as well? I mean, because the other issue, of course, is they've all got to feel safe enough to want to come back to work and to feel that they can be, as I say, safe in that working environment within their agency. So what's the feeling amongst your staff, and what are you doing to reassure them?
It's in the main, the feedback's been really positive. So we've got quite a number of resources supporting our virtual call centre for all of the retail branch customers who've been working really hard and have been absolutely great, embracing the opportunity to support their customers and our members. There is some of them absolutely can't wait to get back from into their branch, because obviously working from home for them is completely different. And they're not necessarily equipped, and the time scale that everybody had to adapt to get into place a home working environment for colleagues to work from as soon as possible means that they haven't got some of the luxuries that they've got within their own branches, things like printers, although we obviously encourage digital use, and they're obviously used to having processes. And I think with the ever-changing communications, and how to administrate files dependent on the supplier stance on rebooking, that's made quite a big difference to them not being able to print a process to follow whilst they're working through. So the colleague side of it, from a feedback going back into branch, has been as important to us as the customer feedback. So the vast majority can't wait as long as they have the appropriate PPE. Some of them are a little bit apprehensive, some that we are, that due to their own personal circumstances, it means that they're not in a position to return to the branch, whether that be through, they're classed as vulnerable, shielding, etc., or, childcare equally is another factor. Some are working fantastically well from home, but with schools still not confirmed when and that's another factor that we have to consider. So we've done a survey for colleagues, we've got all of and asked for their suggestions, so we've had all that back as well, and all of that is being taken into consideration as part of the schedule to ease us back into normal branch operations in the first phase, ready to go back to second phase. I don't know how long normal or what the new normal will look like for some time yet, but certainly they've been heavily involved with that thought process.
Okay, so you'll take it, you'll look at each individual, because Caroline made the point about travelling to work, you childcare and other issues. Not everybody will be able to go back to work or back to their branch. And so what you're saying is you won't make anybody do it. You'll obviously take each case by case, presumably.
Yeah,
and then...
we'll have to look at individual circumstances, and you know, even when we go, obviously, we'll still be on minimum staffing levels when we return to branch, because, like Caroline mentioned, you know, to adhere to the 2 metre guidelines means that in a lot of cases you could only have 2 desks in operation. Average size travel branch, so we need to look at all of that, and the virtual call centre operation may suit some of our colleagues to continue working in that current environment from home. Yeah,
and that must be the same for you, Caroline. You've got, as you say, you've got some massive branches, I know, but you've got smaller ones. You've also got big call centres, haven't you, within your business? So, let's just talk about the call centres for a while, because I imagine people are on, you know, banks of desks quite close to each other. So how are you looking at reopening those workplaces?
Again, social distancing is the main thing for that. So, you know, you can't have side by side, it has to be 2 metres between. So, you know, in some cases we have pods of 10 people. So we have to look at sitting them back to back, or we need to cross out some of the stations. So they will be reduced in terms of how many people we can have working in locations as and when we do open. So like that, Natalie, we will have fewer staff back, and it'll be a phased approach as and when we open. So there's a whole load of scenarios and things we need to think about that we are looking at as a team just now, and trying to cover all the eventualities, because there's just so much to think about, and the guidelines do change often.
But presumably you, in this period of the 7 weeks, you've found some functions that can, you know, I mean, you know, there are some jobs, aren't they, where it's great to be amongst other people. You can, you know, I guess if you're in a sales environment, it's quite exciting to have all your colleagues around you, but there are some functions presumably that could permanently not go back to an office. Is there anything like that that you found that you could make a sort of permanent change?
Yeah, there's things we need to consider, obviously, as well, particularly if we can't get the full workforce back and the pace gets to a point where we do need more personnel support. But we've got the technology in place, and we can continue to have resource working from home, and the teams have adapted really well to that. We are starting to look at how we communicate, not just with our staff virtually, but also our customers as well. So there's a whole host of different things that we need to look at in the virtual world that we've probably had any reason or cause to before. So it's all, as we're saying, the new normal. What is the new normal? It's just looking at trying to cover all bases.
Well, Quonia announced this week that they were launching this virtual video appointment service. Is that something is that what you mean by that? That you'll perhaps look to do more?
Yeah, more so appointments. Yeah, giving the customer the choice to make an appointment, and how we do that. So how can we facilitate that? Can we do that through our Facebook pages, through our web pages, etc.? So it's giving the customer that choice, because there will be a limit to how many customers we can also have in a store at any one time as well. So I think from the comfort of their own home and feeling safe, then that would be the way to go, is to offer that service to the customers. That's something that we're looking at just now as well.
What about you, Simon? Is that something you would look at? I mean, you obviously love that face-to-face contact, don't you, with all your clients? But
we started virtual consultation 3 weeks ago, and we're averaging 8 or 9 appointments a day at the moment, where clients want one-to-one. The majority of our transactions are being done by telephone, but on the website, the clients can log in, make an appointment for a virtual appointment, and they're face-to-face with staff using Zoom. And the great part about Zoom, of course, as we're demonstrating now, is that you can record it. And a lot of the risks are taken away from misinformation and from he said, she said. We all have to deal with that. So I certainly think that virtual consultations will continue, certainly for the more vulnerable, definitely for disabled clients. So it's going to be a facility that we will have in our offices, a station dedicated to virtual appointments. But it also means that as we come out of the furlough scheme, it means that we can have 1s and 2s in stores, but we can turn a computer around and actually tend to clients without having a member of staff there. And again, that solves some distancing issues. So we can serve people in store with an Apple Mac PC in front of them, with with a supervisor.
But the agent isn't actually there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they would still come into the shop.
Yeah, and sit in front of a computer where they could chat with the member of staff who is inside a computer.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? I know. I'm just we've got to hope, haven't we, that this whole last few weeks has certainly made us get to know our neighbours, perhaps become much more involved in our local communities. So, although we can be very doom and gloom, people have said that there could be a silver lining, that we do want to go back into our own high streets. We do want to buy locally. We do want to, connect with people, in our surrounding areas. So perhaps, that could be a benefit for travel agents in their local areas. Do you think that's something that we might see ultimately?
Almost definitely we'll see a computer saying no. Computer says no in live real time. Yeah.
Oh, but do you think, that I think people will look for more, the trusted travel agent? Do you think
Absolutely.
they will?
Yeah, for certain. I mean, we've come out with some great respect from our clients for looking after them during this whole crisis, for being there within 2 rings, as most independents have been. The multiples have taken an absolute hammering because of course they haven't got the flexible resource that we have, and I feel for them in that respect. But people truly do know what an independent travel agent is now, and we're being treated with respect. And I think that we'll not just retain the clients that we've retained over the years, but we'll sway a lot of those direct bookers who still haven't got through on the telephones to come and talk to us.
Okay, that's really good. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, of course, one thing you do, because you've got a premises, a branch, you often hold, client evenings, perhaps bring in a supplier, and you'll be able to have sort of 40 or 50 people having wine from a local region, or, so how's that going to work? Both sort of supplier visits to you during the day, but also these sort of evenings that you run in conjunction with suppliers to sort of inspire your clients. Is that something that you're going to, because I know you used to do it, Caroline, in your big store.
Yes.
I've been to some of them. So how will that work in future, and how will you, have that connection with suppliers? Caroline?
For me,
Caroline.
Virtual world, who knows? We just it's something we've actually spoken about. How do we engage customers with our partners to inspire them for their holidays? We've been doing a lot of social media, kind of armchair inspirational stuff on the marketing. So can we then format that into an online event? Why not? It's definitely, we need to consider all things virtual now and see what the possibilities are to do that, because I think customer engagement is going to be so important, and they want inspiring. Business has to go on, so I do think virtual events is something that we definitely need to look into more.
Okay, and what about you, Natalie? Is that something you've even thought about yet? How you're going to have suppliers making their visits to your stores, and how you're going to conduct these evenings in a different way?
From a promotional in-store perspective, we have, like Caroline's just mentioned, looked at how we can adapt virtually, because they are customers now are having to enter into technology, even if your customer demographic wasn't previously. So it's definitely something virtual that we will look to hold with our supplier partners in the future. I think for us, stage 1 is in branch operations, backing colleagues back in, and customers where they're comfortable. But we've also identified that customers would prefer an appointment, whether that be in the branch or via Zoom or Skype or whatever media form that we can utilise. So certainly there's no reason not to adapt that. From a supplier access perspective into branch, if I'm honest, we've not actually considered how that can work currently. I think initially it will just be a locked door policy that will be by appointment only, prioritising our customers and members, and we will look at how we can engage with our suppliers differently to them going into store, centrally from an engagement perspective, because it is key, our engagement with colleagues and knowledge you know, for our colleagues on the product offering. I mean, at the moment, a lot of the key account managers actually furloughed themselves, so it's what that looks like and when,
Yes.
where we'll be in that stage of branch operations at the point that they are back off furlough and out in the travel agent community.
We know they're missing all their sales calls and things, so I'm sure they'll want to get back to doing something. I mean, conferences is another issue, isn't it? Because that would be a great, I mean, you both held conferences. I don't know about you, Simon. Did you ever hold your own sort of get-togethers with your teams? But
we have 4 big social events every year that could be described as a conference. They're more a drinking contest, to be honest with you, but they're fun.
But it's a chance, isn't it, for suppliers to come along and for your teams,
exactly.
whichever size business you are, whether it's Barrhead, Midcounties or yourselves, you know, it's a chance, isn't it, to get all the suppliers in one place and to get all of that knowledge, great relationships, good contacts and stuff. And I mean, that's another thing that's going to have to be thought of in a different way.
I don't know, to be honest with you, Lucy. I think it's how long we have to think about this. I don't think that we're talking about the next 2 years here. I think we're talking about the next couple of months before people are just going to drift back into normal, and the pubs will be shoulder to shoulder, music events will go on, sports events will go on, and the travel trade will carry on. There's no way we're all going to distance ourselves at social events, at awards ceremonies, conferences. So we'll hold off doing any sort of big stuff until we're allowed to go out to play.
Right, so you won't replace those things, you'll just hold on. And do you both feel as optimistic that it will come back in, you know, a few months' time, Caroline?
You have to be, and it's not forever, we know that, you know, but it does seem to prolong and go on and on and on. But there's got to be an end point, and there will be an end point, because we're seeing that already. It's just when the sentiment is better and when the customers feel safe and when we all feel safe and that. So yeah, it will come back. It's for us, it's just looking at different scenarios. Should we have to consider, should it go on any longer, should it carry on? So but yeah, I don't see it being a year, 2 years. I certainly hope not, but
I mean, I want to be optimistic, and I agree with you, but I mean, most businesses are saying that, you know, we've got to get used to a new norm. They're going to come back from this and they won't be the same businesses, they won't be the same size. So, I mean, that presumably, does that apply to you as well, or do you think you can sustain 20 shops in your case, Simon, and all your branches for you two? Do you think, you know, that's going to be possible going forward?
I'm confident that we will eventually return to 20 stores and eventually continue our expansion and our growth. But it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to get an announcement from Boris saying, off you go, everybody back to work, because there's the raw economics of it. We need to understand what the market demand is. And our plan from the offset was to hunker down and be in this for the long term. So I probably won't have all 20 stores open this side of Christmas, but eventually they all will be. They'll definitely all be open, ready for peaks in January. But we'll softly throughout the rest of this year bring them back online. What
about you, Natalie?
I think our plans to, in a phased approach, will pilot a number of branches operating initially on locked door to learn a little bit more from their experience of going back into branch, with a view that we will open all of the remaining branches once we've tested that pilot, but again on minimum staffing levels to adhere to the guidelines until any guidelines are eased at that point, and then sort of take it one step at a time really, and easing further colleagues back into the branch environment in line with the guidance issued by the...
And Caroline, obviously, like Simon, you were on a big expansion plan, weren't you? I mean, you've obviously got a number of branches anyway, and you were opening lots just as this was all happening. You were still opening some, I think, as it was all sort of starting to kick off. So what's your sort of expectation and sort of timescales?
Yeah, I mean, we like Natalie says, it's in line with guidance and how many staff we can actually have back in the business. It will be a phased approach. In terms of the expansion, yes, we still have those plans to expand. It's on pause for the moment. It's something that we'll pick up probably into next year, but no change on that front. You know, we will continue with that, but we really need to get a sense of that phased approach, bringing limited number of staff back to probably a limited amount of shops in the first phase and just building on that as and when it's safe to do so.
Okay. Now I'm conscious of time, but just very briefly before we go, I think you all said that you're getting some bookings in, so I know it's not as many as you would like, but what's booking, and are you having to sort of change what you're selling? I mean, lots of people are saying, oh, we're going to have to sell more domestic, because clearly, you've got Spain introducing a quarantine, and and our own one, which would stop many people going abroad if they had to quarantine on the way back. So are you changing your product range, or are you just selling further out? And what's selling? Simon, let's start with you.
We're selling lots of next year, plenty at the higher end of the market. I saw a few 20, 30,000 pound bookings going through last week, and we're marketing the whole broad spectrum of product and picking up a spattering, probably about 15% of our normal revenue, but it's a lot better than it has been in past weeks. We're starting a campaign on French travel for obvious reasons. If we're allowed to go in and out of France, we'll become French specialists. So that's going out in the coming weeks. We just got to keep trying every market. And
that French travel, will that be sort of self-drive French and villas and self-catering and stuff?
You got it. Yeah, there's some beautiful holidays to be had in France, and I'd get in my car if I could go on holiday for 2 weeks quite happily.
Yeah. Okay. What about for Barrhead?
Yeah, a mix, like Simon says, we're marketing further out as well. We have trialled some soft marketing, some inspirational marketing, and we have seen a bit more traction, and it is coming in a little bit more each day. So we'll continue to do that. Top sellers for us, the family market are booking, is a higher spend as well, so people have got more disposable income to put into next year because they're not getting holidays for this year.
Right.
They're maybe going that little bit higher category, maybe extending the duration as well. So we are seeing the price up as well. Your destination wise, from a short haul point, I like of your Spain, Canaries, Turkey, but it is that family market. And from a long haul perspective, a mixed bag. There's a lot of inquiries for Florida for 21, 22. So a real diverse cruise as well. There's some.
I mean, that's interesting about Florida, isn't it? Because we haven't got. And I know Disney in Shanghai has reopened, but that's a challenge, isn't it? A theme park where social distancing in a theme park. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they come out with in terms of how they're going to operate.
There's been some stuff is out on that, Luce. They're basically giving you boarding passes to go on the ride, so we don't have to queue anymore. So that's a massive positive for theme parks for certain.
Okay, so like their fast pass thing where you go at a lot of time. Yeah, okay. Great. And sorry, Natalie, what about you in terms of forward bookings, or what's booking in Midcounties at the moment?
Lots of rebooks, as both the other guys have said, for 2021. We're also finding, there is interest for the sort of later on this year. So we're finding lots of city breaks, shorter duration holidays as well for the rest of this year. We've seen a spike in the interest of that. Florida, Caribbean has also been quite popular destination-wise for us. So a real mixture, really. But as Caroline said, when we felt it was appropriate, picked up on our marketing strategy, particularly from a social media perspective, more from an inspirational point for the customer, really, to lose themselves with all the time that many have got in some wonderful destinations that they can start thinking about for the next travels.
Oh, well, listen, it's great to hear, as Simon says, that it's a bit better this week than it was the week before, and if we're going in the right direction and you're all seeing green shoots and in lots of different sectors and different markets, so that's really encouraging to hear. So we wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing your branches open, albeit sort of staged and staggered, but that sounds like the right way to do it, and I'm sure you'll obviously give all due care for your customers and your staff. So thank you for joining us today, and as I say, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks guys. Bye-bye.